Value is simply the perception of lightness or darkness of a color. It is not the same thing as brightness and dullness. So bright, dull, light, dark, those are different contrasts, different properties. A color can be light and bright and dull and light. Value relationships are how we see form. We don't really need chroma to perceive form. If you look at a black and white photograph, you will understand that form is easily perceived, easily understood, and recognized just via light and dark, via value separations between different shapes. Color's not necessary. Value as a property in the subtractive system is the opposite or inverse to luminance, which is the idea in the additive system. So meaning it's inverse. If something is high luminance, it is low value. If something is low luminance, it's high value. So things that are on the lighter end of the value scale would be higher in luminance but lower in value. Things that are on the darker end of the value scale will be higher in value, lower in luminance. So less light is reflecting from the surface and more light's reflecting from the surface. Value is generally expressed in a grayscale. And as you can see here, there is a grayscale going from white to black. We have white, we have our light grays, we have our middle grays, and we have our dark grays, and we have black. One of the things about chromatic value, meaning value of a color, when you change it to black and white, you will immediately see the difference between the chromatic understanding and the achromatic. If there is detail in the chromatic that is the same value, those value differences will be lost when you change to grayscale, so you won't see quite as much detail. Like there's some very subtle variations here in the shadow of the jacket, which you don't pick up here because the values are similar. Another thing to understand about value is just kind of like chroma, hue contrast. We see it in a relative state. It's always seen in relationship to. And so our perception of something's lightness or darkness may not be accurate without first understanding the surrounding color. So here we have a grayscale with a gray strip superimposed on top. And if you'll notice toward the left end, that gray strip appears dark on the lighter colors. And you notice on the right end that it looks light on the darker colors. The gray strip itself is not changing. It's the same gray. But we are perceiving a gradation from dark to light because the ground behind it is gradating from dark to light. And it's a very obvious inverse relationship. The lighter the ground, the darker the color will be perceived on it. The darker the ground, the lighter the color will be perceived. So that gray strip that's sitting there is the same color from end to end. It just appears to be lighter and then it appears to be darker. One of the things about contrast is that it is independent of the brightness and dullness idea. This is the original photograph, and of course we have the brilliant blue ground, slightly shaded, and of course on the figure itself we have shades of blue. And then we have these bright red feet. Evidently he was out on the beach a little too long and got the bottoms of his feet sunburned. But if we translate this directly into grayscale, we notice that the feet and the blue ground, what was red and what is blue in the image on the left, are now the same value. Losing chroma, the feet are no longer emphasized, but the figure is emphasized because it's darker than the ground. One of the ways we use value contrast, not only to create a voice or a mood, but to enter into information hierarchy, visual reads. First read, second read, third read. What do you want people to see first, second, and third in your design? So we use value in partnership with saturation and intensity contrast to create emphasis within a design. As we look at this poster, we will notice there's a light gray ground. There is a very toned warm blue at the top and the bottom, which is just slightly lighter than the second four-line set of type at the top and the bottom, which is close to black but not black. And then in the middle we have a lighter gray, which doesn't separate so easily against the ground. So what we're going to see first is the top and the bottom, so the eye We'll enter here, then we're going to jump down here, and then all of this becomes supporting character and third read. There's a good deal of value contrast in terms of range, but there's nothing that is white and there's nothing that is black, so it's not fully high contrast. When you're dealing with value selection digitally, you're dealing with it in terms of the color picker. So as we're looking at a color picker in Adobe Creative Cloud Photoshop, we have magenta, of course, and green on the other side. And we have lightness, lighter value, and darker value. So in a color picker, you're dealing with intensity, the amount of chroma, but also the amount of light and dark. I've set this to white, and so if I drag this down, watch over here, you'll start seeing the value change. Your grayscale is right in the middle of the red and the green. So if you watch that, it went from white to black, passing through various grays. There's no chroma showing right in the middle of this color picker. It is all black and white and gray. So when we move over here toward the reds, we have a very light pink, and then we are decreasing the luminance but increasing the value and getting into what are called burgundies or maroons. We can go this way and add more chroma, and again keep watching here. We're adding more chroma, less value, switching to a different hue, and keeping the value about the same. Bringing down to about this color, we see the magenta and the warm red, but it's very difficult to see that line in between the two different colors. And that's because the value between this red and this red, the magenta, are pretty close. And therefore it's hard to differentiate the colors. It's hard to separate the colors from each other. As I increase the darkness or the amount of value, it becomes easier to see that dividing line. And the more I increase the value, the more visible that edge becomes. So darker colors advance forward toward the viewer in an artwork or a design from a lighter background. And going the other direction, lighter colors advance forward from darker colors. So if the darker color is on the background, the lighter color will advance. And the lighter the color, the more it will advance.